Croeso cynnes iawn i Grer Landeniol Sant. A very warm welcome to everyone, and especially to Gareth Parry, the Mayor of Bangor. Thank you so much, Gareth, for coming. And thank you too. You've been very supportive of many cathedral services and events recently. We've really enjoyed hosting you and the City Council and all sorts of people from across the city for the civic service a few weeks ago. It's really good to have you here and have an opportunity to have a chat really about issues facing our city. We'll have some time for questions at the end, and to talk to you a little about your own faith as well. You've started coming to our evensong services recently, often with your daughter. I know you've already done an interview for us, which is in Pier, our cathedral magazine, about the sort of rekindling of your faith, perhaps, and how much both you and Tasha are enjoying the peace and calmness of evensong. So could we start with you telling me a little bit about that? What sort of brought you in and why you've stayed?
Thank you very much. Yes, Natasha has always when she was very, very anxious diagnosis, me and my partner, we wanted to keep things as normalised as possible. So we did a change at church, Natasha at that time. Problems got in the way and complications with, how can I say, adjusting to a different lifestyle, unseen disability, probably made us withdraw with it, because we became, I admit that I certainly became isolated, disconnected from a faith community. For no deliberate reason, we just focus on Natasha's needs. And then we roll right through the years now I became entirely from my education.
I'm really sorry to interrupt. I think your mic might not be switched on.
Sorry, wasn't deliberate. Is that any better? Can everyone hear me? Oh, fantastic. Did you catch what I said earlier? No. Okay, right.
If you wouldn't mind, sorry.
I grew up as a Christian over in Anglesey, in Llangoed. I was an altar boy at St Cowdaff's. I have a great affection for the little church there. It's in a stunning location and a very fond place for me, and lots of good memories there as well. When my daughter came into the world, we thought everything, like every parent does, it's going to be fine, everything's going to be great. Then as developmental things came along, we realised things weren't as they should be. And that changed things. We had to focus on a different maybe way of growing up for her, but we still tried to keep in maintaining going to church over at Pier and St Sedals, but things got quite demanding and preoccupations with my work at the time, which wouldn't allow me to be off on Sundays. We kind of drifted away, and then another 20 years, so it's 20 years, so coming back to the church is very different. I sometimes feel a little strange because services have changed slightly differently to what I remember. So every visit is always a new experience, a new learning, and a good one as well. So when I became a councillor and I was asked to be deputy mayor, I started thinking about, when I become mayor, should I have a chaplain? And I thought, there's a vested interest there. I wanted a chaplain because that meant I would have maybe the counsel of someone outside of the council who I could talk to very confidentially. Am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the wrong thing? And just to have that person there was very important. And what I've noticed from our council meeting, and I'm dreading this because this is live stream, so I hope my fellow councillors, it actually does help with the council meetings immensely, and I value Canon Tracy's support this year immensely. And it's been good for me. And then during the initial conversations with my partner and Tracy came up with a suggestion when we said that we drifted away. And she suggested coming back to Evensong as maybe a gentle way to come back and experience what being within a church service can mean. And it's worked. Mostly it's worked. It's, you know, sometimes Natasha will protest, but it's not for any particular reason or person or any part of the service. It might be some external factor which is maybe a century change. So we're enjoying it immensely, and we're enjoying other services as well, and it's enabled me to re-examine and, you know, reaffirm my own faith. So, and it was daunting because I'm used to small village churches, very simple churches, and I'm sometimes overawed by the splendour of cathedrals. But I find this a very extremely welcoming and hospitable. I think the word, you know, hospitality within this cathedral is amazing. So
I'm very glad you think so.
thank you. Yeah.
I think what's lovely about the cathedral is that it essentially functions as a parish church.
Yes.
It's the Anglican church for most people in the city of Bangor, for all sorts of people. I think, yes, welcoming is certainly what we're going for.
It is.
So
and it's become a safe space. A safe space which is non-judgmental, no pressures for Natasha. And one interesting story is how much she loves the music which goes in here. We attended one evening, and for some reason we didn't realise Evensong was on, and I think us called David Hughes were practising. So she protested at leaving until she heard the practice. The teachers were wonderful, and until they finished she wouldn't leave. And then she was satisfied. She'd had a music fix.
Yes. Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
You said she was enjoying the ribbons as well.
Oh yes, they're coming in. You know, the change was so visually stimulating for her. You know, you just face bust out. Wow, what's happened here? yeah, it's very engaging.
Because they've caused an unexpected problem, actually. I thought that some people might enjoy them. It hadn't registered with me that they could be overwhelming for some people, and there have been some people coming in who have struggled. And I suppose, yes, inclusivity is incredibly important, and catering to everyone is actually really hard, it turns out.
It would be very, very hard to cater to everyone.
But essential if we want to be one community rather than a whole lot of kind of disparate groups.
But I'm pretty certain if I return before the Tanon festival finishes, Tasha will love them still.
Good.
So changes of environment sometimes have to happen. It's part of, for the rest of us, that's the norm. And that's a key part. If we stay exactly the same in the same position, we never move forward. So we have to try and keep moving forward all the time, which sometimes can be painful, sometimes it can be pleasurable.
Yeah. So you were just telling me that you're going to need to go off after this to do an interview about the town clock.
Yes. Suddenly came out of the blue this afternoon. Yes. ITV want to do a feature on Bangor's town clock and its history. And I've got to admit, I know very little of the town clock's history. Other than that, it was funded by a philanthropist to create a commercial centre. That's what the little bits I know. But historically, the centre of the high street, to my knowledge, was actually in front of the cathedral, at the junction between the cathedral, the Castle Hotel, and what we now think of as the Relics building, which has been called many names. Because I've seen photos of a fountain, which is now outside a police station, and it operated as a roundabout for when we had the motor vehicles. So traditionally, the centre of the city is the cathedral, and the environs immediate around it, and everything else has grown alongside it.
You say you don't know anything about the
I
town
don't.
clock, but it sounds like you...
That's it. That's as much as I know. The other things I know about the town clock is that historically it's always been the place, especially when you've been a teenager, I don't know whether it's true now, it's a long time for me, that you'd arrange to meet up with your friends or your date and meet under the clock. And there used to be a strong tradition of seeing in the new year under the clock in Bangor High Street. I don't know if anybody here remembers doing that? Oh, we got a hand up there. Yes, brilliant.
Is Is there a lot of that in being mayor then, suddenly being asked to speak about something that you know absolutely nothing
absolutely, about? Yes. Yeah, to speak about subjects you have no real knowledge at all and try and get through it and, and try and be convincing as possible.
Well, I'll try not to ask you too difficult questions. I mean, when I was chatting to you before, I was expecting to ask you all about the City Council's environmental policies, and suddenly discovered that you know all sorts of interesting things about the River Tanon. And its history. I mean, I didn't mean to ask you here to give a history talk about the river, but would you mind sharing a bit of what you told me yesterday about, especially its old names?
The colloquial names we used to use. Okay. The Tanon, the Adder. I certainly remember my parents and my grandparents referring to it as, and I do apologise for this, the Avangachi. I can hear some laughter there for the obvious reasons why. But it actually means so much that the Adder, the Tanon, has meant to the city through all the centuries. Obviously, right back to the foundation of the city, and then the communities which have sprung up right in through our industrial age, through the advent of the we still see some of the cottages there along Carnarvon Road as well, and how important that river was to well-being. And we've had bad things as well on the outflow down in Hirral. Back in the 1800s, one of the major reasons for clearing Hirral was not just the quality of the dwellings, it was the problems which are raised from bad sanitation. And I'm proud to be in the Bangor City Council, in name at least, has part of that legacy, because it was Bangor City Council which really strove to improve the water quality, which led to better health, to offset the effects that we'd had typhoid outbreaks in Bangor, which were linked to the water quality. Bangor City Council then also was pioneers in getting electricity supply, its own generators, gas supply, so we were a very progressive council back in the 1800s. Things have changed through government reorganisation. I think the best we can manage is maybe put up Christmas lights on the high street now. So, but we still strive to try and fill that ambition of trying to do the best we can for the people within the community.
Sorry, you mentioned Christmas lights, and I've just had flashbacks to a couple of days ago when I was trying to put those fairy lights up around there, sort of standing on someone's shoulders.
So the Adder, it's a living part of it. At one point in my career, I was working at a warehouse on Carnarvon Road. And when the Adder overflowed, this is before the final stages of the culvert work, we had a butchery department at the back of the building. So if the Adder overflowed during the storm, it meant that we had fountains of brown water erupting in the butchery department. Not the best advert for your Sunday roast, I admit. So we were so grateful when Welsh Water finally did the completion of the works. That place was actually now where Aldi is, and you can see the car park, which was part of the work. And that was the final safety measure, I think, there to stop the Adder really erupting and causing... It's quiet, at least.
Well, not to that extent. It causes problems in our car park occasionally. It sort of, one corner of our car park becomes a bit of a lake.
But hopefully now, with the new measures down at Hirral, that might not happen so much.
Yes, hopefully, and I think that's coming to an end soon. It's right outside my house, so I hope it does. I ventured down into the, it was yesterday, yes, when we were setting this up. We've got some water in a prayer station that's going to be here throughout the festival, and we've put some water from the river, the Tanon, in mixed in there, and I went down to collect it, and the ground wasn't as firm as I'd thought. This is a new pair of shoes. Yes, less muddy.
Brilliant.
So rivers. We are sort of in the middle of this river that we've built through the cathedral, and the theme of rivers for our festival was inspired by the Archbishop's focus on the crisis facing our waterways as he's approaching the Restoring Welsh Rivers Summit next month River pollution's been discussed a few times at the Church in Wales governing body meetings, and there have been some questions from inside and outside the church about why we're doing this, why we're putting our time and energy into this, and it really comes down to sort of why religion is getting involved in politics. What do you think? Should the church stay out of it?
That's a yes-no question. I think the church is a valid place to be speaking about what government actions have been taken, what the water companies are doing, and what industry is doing to our water, both in river and our coastal areas, and the effects that of the actions which we're doing or the inactions we're doing are causing problems. I can certainly remember as a child the Gegin River, just by Port Penrhyn, and that you could see visible most of the fish coming downstream, the salmon coming out to go out to mature in the sea. Yet you go there now, you see very little evidence of that, whether that's through overfishing in the past or whether river pollution. And that's not a good place to be. It's a valuable part of the ecosystem which we're all dependent on. And as we've seen here, water is a living entity in itself, which we're utterly and utterly dependent on, and we have through our history. So the church and hopefully other faith groups and other organisations come together and actually create positive change that we can actually improve things. There has been some positive messages, I believe, the last couple of days. I believe the Welsh Government and the Westminster Government have formed a new committee to address some of the raising, whether that's as a direct result of what's happening from the Church of Wales. I hope so. But either way, if we can make positive change, that's going to be a good thing. Bangor City Council on its own, I'm going to say, in the areas of influence that we have, which is quite small, we did adopt last year, we would try and adopt as ecological policies as possible. In everything we do, that bears in mind that everything we do bears in mind a piece of legislation called the Future Wellbeing of Generations Act. So we opted to go paperless, so we don't print endless agendas and reports. We rely on electronic means to do that in our meetings. We try and look at how best we can recycle materials. We, of course, have a major asset in Bangor, the Pier, which is a very carbon-intensive project, ongoing, and especially maintaining and replacing the steel and the iron in there. So then we look at how can we then improve the natural areas which we look after, Menai Woods. We have some other areas coming into Bangor City's Council's management soon, and how we can manage those for both public benefit and to keep those as green and as ecologically friendly as possible. So we do, it's very conscious.
There's lots going on. Yeah.
It's ongoing.
Yeah.
Long way to go, and I don't think that us on our own is going to make the big impact, but every little bit will help, and that goes down to even citizens examining their actions. How can you change things for rivers and water? And the very basic things there which are in the public domain. Find ecological solutions which don't contaminate the water. There've been measures in the past, some people may be aware of that, washing powders and dishwasher tablets are maybe not as 100% as effective as they were maybe 10 years ago, because legislation has removed phosphates for there, which were damaging fish livelihoods. So look at the things which we do on a daily basis. Is this causing harm? And that extends to industry. One of the surprising things I discovered, I was a caterer by trade, hospitality. And every place I worked, we were always very diligent. When we built a new business or a restaurant or hotel, we always installed grease traps to catch grease from coming from the kitchens, so that we could dispose of that safely. Then I only found out recently this year, it's not an actual mandatory requirement for businesses, food businesses. And I think that's one area that perhaps in the planning stages or planners should be looking at there to install those. It's not just about chemicals getting into water supply, it's contaminants such as waste oils and fats getting into in that ecosystem as well.
Yes, we had Professor Christian Dunn from Bangor University here last night talking about the crisis facing our rivers, His talk was entitled "The River Pollution Crisis, the Problem and the Solution," which was quite a reassuring title in a way, because we so often hear what's wrong, but not what we can do to fix it. And Professor Dunn took us through what needs to happen practically, both for us as individuals and also as businesses, as organisations and as a community, to be able to tackle the problem. So it's really reassuring to hear that the City Council has a plan. Yes. And are there things that we can do to help? I've seen you out with the litter picking group.
Yes.
How do we get involved with that? Are there other things that are...
Well, I've only done one, I admit. I've only done one at Mayor's Clean-up Day, and that was very well supported. Volunteers from across the city, from different groups, all came together, and we made a little bit of impact on the day in the middle of Bangor. And I believe, independently, a very good group of people have come from Hirrell and from Garth and have formed a Keep Bangor Tidy group. So we've offered them support because we have equipment for clean-up days, and that equipment's available to any group who wants to do a clean-up as well. So it's things are developing in that there are people, citizens, volunteers wanting to take part. And there's a micro-action which has happened. We used to have, many years ago, the County Council used to fund a person to clean the High Street daily. And one of the biggest things I've seen over the last year, what happened to that gentleman, that person doing that job? Well, I'm glad to report that post has come back, kind of when they're funding that person, but he's now working in co-management with Bangor City Council, so not just the High Street. If there is an area in the city which has a sudden problem, the City Council staff can actually maybe direct that person down there to do a quick remedial action if needed. So again, positive steps forward and co-working between two different councils, trying to keep our environment clean and tidy and minimise the impact of absent-minded behaviour.
Yes.
I'm going to say it that way.
Yes. Yeah, that's
It's
really...
so easy to drop something on the street, yes.
Yes. It's really good to hear, and all these things that we're doing together, I suppose, to improve our city. And as a cathedral and as a diocese, we're looking forward to celebrating our 1500th anniversary next year. Of course, that's also the 1500th anniversary of our whole city, from when St Daniel came here in 525 to found his class on the banks of the River Tanon. I know there'll be lots of exciting plans for the celebrations, which will be announced soon. But what are we looking forward to over this anniversary year? What are we kind of thinking about? Where's the focus?
Focus? I can only reply as an individual. With 20 councillors, there's 20 different opinions. Yes. But the one underlying thing is that we celebrate where we've come from, which is the foundation. We should be looking forward to what we want to be. Always looking how can we improve our city for ourselves and for our visitors and for our students, and make it enhance our quality of life here. Not necessarily commercially, but spiritually, in our mindsets, by coming together as a city and bringing all the lived communities together. And I think that's probably going to be the underlying theme from certainly Bangor City Council, to bring people together, celebrate who we are, celebrate what we want to be, and be proud of Bangor City. And it's an amazing city, with such a rich, mixed history, both industrial and pre-industrial and medieval, and of course the foundation of this cathedral and the class. Yeah. That's something to be really proud of what we are. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think you've answered all of my questions. Can we see if anyone else has one?
By all means, let's open the room, please.
Can I have someone to take this microphone and any questions? Oh, hang on, that's not on. Right, there we go. There's a question. There we go. Thanks.
I know what goes on in the council meetings, so you might be a bit nervous. You were saying that councils used to have a bigger remit and you're a bit limited now by what you can do. What's the one thing that you'd really like to do to improve Bangor City that you're not really able to, that frustrates you?
We have a wonderful space here at the Cathedral, but we need a space, and there are some small spaces coming available now where for community activities, advice centres we need to try and create to enable people to use the centre of the town. There's big positives coming. The Health and Wellbeing Centre through the government, Cathedral, will be an amazing transformational thing for the city. It comes back to restoring and speaking to your neighbour. What do you think about Bangor? What can we do to be all positive about Bangor? We see on social media a lot of things, or we want certain stores to open. But the reality for me is that that's transitory. We need things which are going to last with us and change the high street. There's been a plan for the last, actually, 12 years, 10 years. The high street has been allowed, should be mixed accommodation, retail, other outlets on there. And that's what will change the nature of the high street. But the high street will still remain that place where you can catch up with your neighbour. If you're from Maesgwrs, you can catch up with your neighbour from Maestryfan, the one you were at school with, catch up, have a coffee, have a jangle, have a moida. And actually, it's one of the wonderful things about Bangor, that you can do that. It does make shopping a long time experience, though, from one end to the other. But it's the positivity I think we need to keep on moving. When we focus on that we can be the positive changes ourselves from us as citizens, then things change.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any more questions? One over there? Thank you.
I'm sure you're very used to people asking you for things and for help and that kind of thing, but what would you ask from us as a cathedral? What can we do to improve the city, to better the experience for the people who live here? What would you like from us?
I think you're doing it already. You have the most important thing. You have an open door. You're welcoming people, whether they're coming to just as tourists to see the structure, or whether they're coming to experience the cathedral as part of their own faith or belief. I think that's the major thing you're doing. And that's with all the volunteers which I've met, through the clergy, the laity. You're doing the most important thing, opening your door to people.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's interesting you said about the doors, because in the civic service, I think we slightly changed the order of where some things happened, because there were the questions that you were asked when you came in about what we could do for you and what you could do for us and things. They're supposed to happen at the door, and it felt a little bit like you weren't allowed in unless we'd got the questions right.
I got visions of the state opening of the Parliament with Black Rod.
Yes. But I was really glad we moved them, because it meant we were in, and we were sort of inside and in a place where we were able to have those conversations, rather than there being a barrier and you needing the correct answers before you can get in.
No, thank you for that question. It is about opening your door, being welcoming to everyone, and you're doing that incredibly well, as you would do. And if other people, other businesses, other groups start doing that, then some do, then we create that real difference in mindset and positivity, and this is a really fantastic place to live, to visit.
I think we've got another question here.
Could I ask how much money you have, what your budget is? Because to get a scale of the kind of power or pressure you can bring to bear on situations. And as a second part...
I do apologise, my hearing's bad.
How much money the City Council has? I mean, what your annual budget is?
Roughly, at the top of my head, we have a precept revenue close to £500,000. That comes from the precept which is set on top of the council tax. We maintain a mandatory minimal reserve of 100,000. In terms of expenditure, we do publish the accounts, and there is always what we call the democracy window in July, where people can actually inspect the accounts. Setting the precept is probably the most important, hardest decision a community council has to do, because ultimately it's people's money. And hard and difficult decisions are made. As I mentioned earlier, we have a Victorian pier, which considerably eats up a lot of that budget. And we do work actively with the Friends of Garth Pier to see how we can keep that precept demand down as best as possible. Before we end up looking at questions of, is it viable maintaining the pier? Do we have to close the gates? Things we really don't want to contemplate again. We've been through that back in the 70s and 80s. So, yes, we have a high precept. But we try and give good value. We try to do community events. We try and support organisations. We have a very active grant policy as well available. Last year we helped a number of organisations, not just for events, but also for communal spaces. We gave some very vital assistance to Glanather Community Centre. There's some structural works there. And now Glanather Community Centre is in a slightly better place, so it can remain open. So we are a community council, so everything we do is focused on community. There's no commercial side to it.
Could I ask how many properties you own and whether they're,
How many properties? Well, I'll have to use my fingers now. We own Penryn Hall and the offices there. We own the pier. We're the landlord. We own the site of Nampole Stadium. We own some small pockets, which is the Italian restaurant. We're the landlord there. And what is now called the Pier Master's House, but in its past was the Ferry Master's House. Menai Woods. We used to own a substantial part of Penryn Arms Woods, but that was sold many years ago. And I think we have some small pockets of land which are coming through on asset transfers as well. These are green spaces, trying to protect those green spaces.
So they're mostly liabilities rather than income earning?
They're liabilities. They're an asset in that there will always be a assignable value to them, but they are key to the city.
Yeah.
The Pier Master's House was an integral part of the pier. The pier obviously is owned by the City Council, but we don't own it still. We own it in trust. We own it for the people of the Bangor. We've actively had on our balance sheet to look at buying a premises possibly on the high street with an idea of renovation and letting it out to organisations. Quite simply, we haven't found the right one yet to do it. But that search is still there as an active agenda item. What we also do is that we will always review, when we set a precept, it's not a case of just plucking a figure in there. Everything has to be reasonably costed out what we predict. So next year's precept will be coming into the next 2 months. We're drawing in our forecast for what we need for staffing, for training. What do we anticipate the pier will cost us next year? What will our maintenance budget for the fabric of Nampole Stadium cost? So those are things there we have to consider in setting that figure. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions? Yes.
You mentioned the pier.
Sorry?
You mentioned the pier.
Yes.
We've lived here about 3 years, and actually walking down and on the pier is a real enjoyment. And we kind of get the impression that most people enjoy it. 50p per visit, or in the case, I mean, if you buy a yearly pass, I think it's £25. I mean, the income from the pier, from visitors, is that kind of nothing in terms of what it takes to...
I'll give you the latest figure, because we've just published our 3 monthly accounts. This year to date, the pier has produced £75,000 through entrances. Wow. However, we've spent £130,000 on doing the wind trusses, general maintenance.
Okay. I mean, it seems to me that the charges could go up.
They are, thank you very much for that. Because 2 weeks ago, it was discussed, and I believe it's going to be on one of the next two meetings, a consideration of considering to increase the entrance fee. It's a very hard question to answer because we want people to enjoy the pier as much as possible. And we know that I'm not saying the words cost of living kicks in to make it as accessible as possible for everybody. So it's a hard one to decide. And there's 20 people involved in that decision. And it will be a very interesting evening.
I was on the pier the other day, and because I'm young, I have no way of paying 50p. The card machine, they said the minimum is £1, and now I have a 50p. But it's
Chris, can you speak?
sorry, now I have a 50p in my pocket as change, which I will never use. So I would support £1, even though I paid it. I don't think that
Did you
yeah, a pound is nothing.
I'll repeat.
Sorry.
I'll repeat.
You can translate for me.
My problem.
I know what it was.
It's age.
He was just asking about that young people especially tend to not carry cash.
Yes.
And the minimum charge that the machine will do is £1. And so if you go and try and pay by card, you pay £1 and they then give you 50p back.
Yes.
And if you do this often, you end up collecting 50p's that you never remember to bring back to the pier with you to pay with next time.
Okay. So we apologise for causing holes in your trouser pockets. There are some changes coming through on that system. Part of the problem's been not just the Wi-Fi, the card terminal. We're looking at the card terminals. We're looking at the banking arrangements for those. We're also putting in some additional Wi-Fi. Not just us, the Friends of Garth Pier, who do a marvellous job, and they fundraise themselves. And what they fundraise goes to the restoration of the pier as well. So you might have seen some new development, new kiosks being built. That's been worked between both the City Council and the Friends of Garth Pier. The Friends of Garth Pier are funding some Wi-Fi aerials to be installed near the kiosks to make the card terminals work better, because it's not the best place for mobile phone signal. So all the things you mentioned there are on the slate to address, and hopefully we can.
Wonderful.
We might increase the fee then to £1, so we'll save those 50p's for you.
I think I actually missed, in repeating his question, I missed off the ending of it, which was actually he was supporting increasing it to £1.
Yes, great. Yeah.
I think
It would have been more efficient for me, and it sounds like it would balance your budget. It balance your budget for the pier by doubling the income.
And it's a valid. And one of the things for a councillor is not to prejudge before we have our meetings, so we can hear everybody's opinion, and based on that opinion, then we go back to what we originally thought of in the first place. So, sorry, I shouldn't say that. No, it's actually listening to everyone's opinion. Every council will be in contact with people in their communities, and there may be feelings about increasing it. The most important thing is that no one should be disadvantaged from actually accessing the pier. It is a community venue. It's really important that. And I can speak with my hand on my heart as one of the little children when they closed and locked those gates back in the early 70s. Never want to see it closed again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any more questions?
What about you?
Yes,
Alicia?
Children very welcome to ask questions as well.
Do you want to ask a
Do
question?
you have any questions for the Mayor?
What would you like to see change in Bangor? I'll ask you a question, Alicia.
Is there anything that you would like to see happening?
If we could change anything about the city, what would you change? Nothing, because it's perfect.
You got no wish list? Whoa!
Yes.
Anything on your wish list? You love Bangor.
Yes.
What's your favourite bit about Bangor?
This church.
Good answer.
Good.
Thank you.
You can tell he comes here a lot.
No, thank you so much. If there's,
Thank you.
thank you for the opportunity to speak then. We're always available. happy to speak individually, or if you've got an issue about the city or something like that, myself, the town clerk, we'll always be delighted to hear people's opinions, because it's only by your opinions we can form what we do. We need to hear that. So I'll take that away, that there's overwhelming support to increase the pier entrance to £1. And when we're blamed for it, we'll point to that young man at the end there. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, it's been so good to talk to you and to hear about. Yes, as you say, I think some people lots of people don't understand what is the city council.
Oh gosh, yes.
How any of it works.
Every so often we go out, and myself and I believe previous mayors have done, and we'll ask people on Bangor High Street the important question: how many people does Bangor City Council employ? And we get a range of answers: 600, 1,000, 200. Very seldom we might get the right answer, about 6, because it's about 6 people we employ. Because we retained the name from when Bangor City Council was a big council. It became part of Avon Borough Council, then the 74 government reorganisation changed things. So we are really a community council, a parish council, of a very, very concentrated urban city surrounded by a rural area. So it is a significant difference. And in the main, city councillors are volunteers. We don't generally get paid. We get a small expense package of about £200 a year to cover paper and phone bills and things like that. But regardless of any political persuasion, we're all volunteers. But we do need to hear people's opinions, so we can actually, that forms what we do, what we can do within the scope of what a city community council can do.
I suppose that's why it's very good to talk and to understand that you are sort of approachable, and that the council isn't some kind of scary thing that
we did try to be big. We
us.
did try to be in the past a bigger council. We had a former mayor, Eddie Duggan, and he really pressed the case for Bangor City Council to become a full-blown borough council. Only to get the information legally, Bangor's population had to go up dramatically from about 12,000 to 40,000 to be able to qualify to do that. Sadly, we didn't have enough housing, so we couldn't do it. So thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much. I think the Mayor's kindly agreed to stay around for a bit, so if you'd like to ask him any more questions, sort of more informally over a coffee, please do continue to enjoy the rest of the...
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.